Welcome back to Digby, Nova Scotia for Bell Alliance continuing coverage of the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championship. And coming up on Sheet B, you see the teams on your screen there. Team Prince Edward Island, skipped by Kim Dolan, taking on Team Ontario, led by Joanne Rizzo. As you can see, PEI will be throwing red rocks, Ontario will be yellow, and Ontario, by virtue of being closer to the button, will have last rock here to start us off. Second draw on day 3, 10th draw overall. And Julie Scales starts us off. Coming into action today, these two teams part of Pool B, and Ontario came into today's action at 3-1, Prince Edward Island 1-3. So obviously a big game for both teams, but certainly more so for Prince Edward Island, as you don't like to see a fourth loss go in the loss column in a tournament like this. Typically, I guess the rule of thumb is that to have a chance to even get a sniff around playoff action, you want to keep it to 3 losses. Not saying that 4 is the end of it all, but certainly 3 losses tends to be the area where you like to keep it. Early stages here of this first end. Hard to believe we've already reached Wednesday, midweek here. Bell Alliance TV1 featuring games on Sheet B and D all week long. And we'll be here right up to and including the championship games on Saturday afternoon. This first end, keeping pretty clean. As you can see, no guards in play, and just that one Prince Edward Island red rock. Ontario with just the 1 loss on their record. And they take that red rock out of play, so completely open. So it would appear as though Joanne Rizzo may be playing for the blank here in 1. Just getting a feel of that ice, getting the weights down. And then perhaps once you get that first end under your belt, carry that hammer over into 2. Then you can try and do some damage. The 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships being brought to you live online, of course, by Bell Alliance TV1. You can also find a link to the stream at digbyarearecreation.ca, as well as the Curling Canada website. Thank you to Curling Canada for following along on Twitter and retweeting tweets that I've sent out about the tournament. Always like to take some pictures of the behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on. Carrie Lackey leaning in, brushing that for line. And they get the little angle hit. And again, Ontario keeping it clean here, so pretty obvious that they're looking to do a blank here in 1. This is Sandra Matheson from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, as are all members of this Kim Dolan foursome, all hailing from the capital city. Birthplace of Confederation in Canada, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Beautiful city, a historic city. And if you've never been, absolutely worth the trip. So, it's that one Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island Team PEI Rock in play. And I'm sure that Ontario will want to peel that off. And Joanne Rizzo and her Ontario foursome just continuing to keep it clean here. So it's interesting. Sometimes in a first end, this is exactly what you'll see. The team with the hammer just wants to keep it clean. Get the ins and outs of the ice under control and then carry the hammer over into the second end. And other times you'll see a team kind of throw a wrench into those plans, putting rocks in play, and you end up not able to blank. We actually have seen as many as 5 points scored at this event in the first end. So Charlottetown and the representatives from PEI putting a guard in play. And we'll see what Joanne Rizzo has in store as we're into Vice Rocks now. Carrie Lackey will settle in and get ready to throw for Team Ontario. Lackey with her first throw here in this first end. Working that rock. No problem as it gets by the guard. So now with that guard in play, a little perhaps change in the thinking here of Joanne Rizzo as she puts a rock into the rings, and maybe we'll take a chance here to see if she can muster up a couple of points here in this end. Just when you think you got it all figured out, the skip will throw a curveball at you.
They had a bleeder on ice D, so they had to stop the blood and then we had to fix the ice.
So over on our feature game on sheet D, there was a situation, somebody suffering, I don't know if it was a nosebleed or a cut, but there was some blood that ended up going onto the ice surface, so they had to call the officials out, get that all cleaned up, and there was a bit of a delay over there on sheet D, but things look to be back underway now, so everything back under control on sheet D. And here on our game on sheet B, you see the situation unfolding here. Ontario with the hammer in this first end, a couple of rocks in play now. PEI playing red, Ontario with yellow. Ontario, as you see, on the scoreboard in behind with the hammer here in this first end. Carrie Lackey from Petrolia, Ontario, with her second throw here in this end. Looks like it's going to be by that guard, no problem. Gets the hit on that PEI stone. Spills it out the back, and the yellow of Ontario will hang around, so Ontario sitting a couple. Getting down now to skip stones here. Kim Dolan skipping the PEI rink, and Joanne Rizzo throwing those skip stones for Ontario. This 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championship just flying by, already into the 10th draw. Third day of the competition, 3 more days to come after this. We'll start getting into the playoffs on Friday, and then we'll have the gold medal games Saturday afternoon live on Bella Line TV1, as well as the Everest Furby Pro-Am. We'll have that live as well. PEI takes care of that one Ontario stone and then gets a roll to the other side of the sheet, and will sit behind the tee line on the forefoot. And speaking of that Pro-Am, that's going to be a very special event. It's kind of the precursor, if you will, to the men's and women's gold medal games on Saturday afternoon. The four iconic Canadian curlers taking part: Jennifer Jones, Randy Furby, Brad Jacobs, and Al Hackner. And they will partner with four senior club curlers who were contest winners from across the country. Jones and Furby will be team captains. They'll have a draft, and then they'll play the Pro-Am. All of the curlers for the Pro-Am will be mic'd. So we'll have to make sure we remind them to mind their P's and Q's, as my mom used to say. They will be mic'd, but that should be a lot of fun. I'm sure there'll be a few jokes and a few good-natured ribs handed out, as well as maybe even an attempt at a trick shot or two. You just never know. And a good shot there as Ontario takes care of that red PEI rock. Just got it by their own stone that sits at the back of the 8. Action here early in this first end. PEI 1 and 3 would love to secure their second victory here and keep some hopes alive of moving forward into a playoff situation. Ontario at 3 and 1, sitting a little better. Certainly a fourth win would give them a little breathing space at the top portion of their pool. Digby area doing a wonderful job of hosting this event. The community has absolutely opened up its arms to welcome all of the curlers, team officials, fans, and broadcasters. Mayor Ben Cleveland of the town of Digby, very excited to have this event here, and he's been a big supporter of this curling event and has been front and center in a lot of the promotion of the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championship. And why not? When you're the mayor of the town that's hosting a national event, why not be front and center waving the flag? Rizzo, final rock here in this first end. Line looks good, weight looks good. Looking to just bring it into the house and score a deuce. And that's exactly what happens. So Ontario, early stages, looked like they were trying to keep it clean and maybe just trying to see how the end would play out. It appeared with no guards in play in an empty house that they might be just going for the blank, but with a PEI guard going in play, Rizzo decided to play in around it, and it was kind of game on from there. So 2 points in end number 1. We'll move now to end 2. PEI will have the hammer here, and Ontario will get us started with that 2-0 lead. So good start for Ontario in this one. And if you're a skip with hammer, your goal is to put at least 2 or more up if you're going to score points. You never like to score just the single, and if you're the opposing skip, that's kind of the goal. Hey, if we're facing hammer, let's try to make a steal. If we can't steal, let's limit it to a single point. So small victory for Joanne Rizzo in Ontario there, scoring multiple points with hammer in end number 1. And back now we'll go to Prince Edward Island. And there's 4 pools in total at this event. There's an A and B pool on both the men's and women's side. And it's a pretty interesting playoff scenario. At some point today I'll look to get the exact breakdown of how the playoffs work and the crossovers between the pools. And shape up who's looking good to make it into the playoffs. Ms. Yellow Rock from Ontario comes into the house and will nudge off another yellow. And you'll see both of those rocks sitting right there, top part of the 4-foot. So not a terrible situation for Ontario here, but again, just very early in this second end. Only the first couple of stones been thrown here. This one coming down now, moving over to the center line. It's going to hit off that top stone and then just angle over and nudge the other Ontario stone just a little bit. So one Ontario yellow goes out the back. The PEI shooter sticks around, and you see the 2 rocks in the house. And then off to the left-hand side of your screen, that one deep guard off to the side belonging to PEI. Ontario quickly back down. Getting their next stone away. And that moves things around just a little bit. No more Charlottetown Prince Edward Island red, and only a couple of yellow from Ontario. And that one rock that you see well over on the right of your screen toward the back portion of the 12-foot. Sandra Matheson now with her throw for Prince Edward Island here. And again, she's going to follow a similar path down that center line. Really starting to move now as you see it come across the center line, and now full effect of that swing, straight line brushing. Nice job as they brush that just by the guard. Good brushing by the front end of Scales and McInnes. And that PEI rock comes to a stop at the top of the 12. Ontario now will look to come down, trying to take out that guard, and they do angle it away. And we saw this Ontario team in an earlier draw, and typically very good when called upon to peel out an opposing stone. More often than not, they will make that shot. Sandra Matheson now with her second. He's had a brief look at some of the bundled up spectators in behind. So looking ahead, we start getting into the playoffs tomorrow, and it's quite an extended version of a crossover. So we don't know what the matchups will be tomorrow morning. We won't know until the conclusion of the 7:30 draw this evening. And there's that nice shot from Ontario as they come across the guard and remove one of the PEI Red Rocks. But again, just taking a look, for example, at tomorrow morning, we'll have different pools from the men's, but we'll have 1 versus 4 on the men's side, 2 versus 5, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 5, 3 versus 6 on the men's and women's side. That'll be the 9 o'clock draw tomorrow morning. And then again, based on who comes out of those morning draws, then we'll know more as we go forward. So the round robin essentially ends today. As you see that Charlottetown Prince Edward Island Rock sitting just about split across that T line. Again, there's 4 pools, men's pool A and B, women's pool A and B. And then there's the women's seeding pool and the men's seeding pool, and then there's the 2 championship pools, and that's what we move into tomorrow morning, seeding pools and championship pools. So tomorrow morning on sheet B and D, we'll have women's championship pool, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 5. That's what we'll have on sheet B and D. And again, we won't know who those teams are until the completion of play this evening. And if you're wondering about the schedule and those teams, you can always check out bellalliant.ca/TV1. And when you go to the Everest Canadian Senior Men's and Women's Curling Championship site, there'll be a couple of links you can click on. One is to watch the live broadcast. The other one is to go to the schedule. You can also visit the Digby Area Recreation for information. And as well, hopefully by tomorrow morning, we'll be able to announce on air when we hit the air at 9 o'clock for our first draw what those matchups and who those teams are. But still, a couple of draws to take care of here today. Ontario leads this one 2-0. And they take that deep guard from PEI, drive it back onto a couple of other rocks and clear those out of the scoring area. So what you're left with is what you see there. 3 rocks in the rings and shot rock belonging to Ontario. So again, this is the last day of the round robin. Tomorrow morning we start getting into the seeding pool and the championship pool. And just a reminder, on Saturday at 3 o'clock, the men's gold medal game will be on sheet B and the women's gold medal game will be on sheet D, both scheduled to hit the air 3 o'clock Atlantic time. We've got that 1 PEI rock now sitting just above the button. That's what you see Kerry Lackey talking to Ontario skip Joanne Rizzo about. And then you see on the other side, Kim Dolan, the PEI skip, doing a little housekeeping there. There is the Ontario skip from Zweibrücken, Germany. I joked with Joanne Rizzo last night. I said, you know, I said, I mentioned your hometown in Germany in the broadcast, and I said, I'm pretty sure I said it right. And she said, say it for me. And I couldn't remember the name. And then I looked at one of her teammates and I go, tell her I said it right. And she goes, oh yeah, you nailed it. So, Zweibrücken, Germany. And Rizzo from Zweibrücken comes right down the center line, nails that Charlottetown red, drives it out the back, and her shooter rolls off to the side and gets a little bit of cover from that Ontario stone at the top of the 12, and also is nestled up next to that PEI red. So now Kim Dolan going to have to decide how she wants to deal with those yellow rocks. PEI with the hammer here in 2, trailing by 2. Nice look at what she's dealing with right there. That's kind of the ice level view from the hack that Dolan will have when she settles in at the other end of the ice and looks up towards the rocks in the house. Want to give a compliment to the crew working in the Everest patch here. They have been cooking up all kinds of home-style food during this event, and I had a lovely bowl of corn chowder today and some homemade tea biscuits. Good stuff. You never have to worry about eating well at a curling event. So this is Kim Dolan with her first of 2 skip stones in this second end. Dolan coming down, looking to take out the yellow, and it just didn't go over enough as she ends up bumping onto her own red, and then because of the tightness of the yellow Ontario stone to that Charlottetown red, a bit of a jam, and on the Ontario yellow will stay right in place. So really Dolan just traded one of her own rocks for another, and PEI still shot, Ontario still shot rock here. You heard off to the side one of the Ontario players asking if anybody got a time on that throw, trying to get a read on ice and on weight. So Dolan going through her routine, settles in, stands up, adjusts the glasses. A little rub of the shoe for good luck. And springs out of the hack and lets go her final throw here in end 2. Last look for Rizzo. Now she calls for some sweeping. Nicely done. Just what Rizzo wanted to do. Got the nice little angle hit on that PEI red, and then gets the friendly roll off to the side, and now those 2 Ontario rocks that you see in the 8-foot frozen up against one another and creating a potential jam should PEI try to remove it. So Kim Dolan and PEI can do no better than a single point here. In the background, Rizzo and Lackey discussing what's to come next as Dolan delivers the final rock here of this second end. Dolan just looking to draw in for the single. Just a little bit of housekeeping brushing going on there. You don't want this to roll too far. Lackey's going to come over. Can she drag it back? Can she take it back deep enough? Wow, this could be a measurement between that last rock from Dolan. Well, I didn't quite get the signal, and from our angle, could not tell 100% who got the point. I guess we'll know as soon as we see who settles into the hack to throw first. Again, very hard to tell from the particular angle we had. The two rocks looked very close, but when the curlers right there on the scene took the bird's eye overhead view, they made the decision quickly, and the point does go to PEI. So Dolan, just enough weight, gets the single point, and Ontario now will have a 2-1 lead with the hammer here in the third end. So very, very close. Thinnest of margins there as Ontario jumped on that Dolan offering and tried the very best to sweep it and drag it out beyond the 4-foot, but they just couldn't drag it far enough, and by the narrowest of margins, Dolan's PEI rock does count for 1. But if you're Joanne Rizzo, that's kind of a small victory because you've kept your opponent to a single point with the hammer, and now Ontario curls here in 3, still having the lead and with last rock advantage in this third end. So a nice end there for both teams and a lot of fun to watch. PEI with their first throw here in this end. Julie Scales delivers it. Julie Scales. Was the runner-up in last year's Travelers Canadian Curling Club Championship, a tournament of which I did play-by-play for, and actually Julie stopped me the other night and said, "Hey, Scott, right?" And I said, "Absolutely." She said, "Yeah, I skipped PEI." I said, "I remember." I said, "I knew you looked familiar when I came here this week," so it was nice to have a chance to catch up with Julie and chat. And her PEI rink, they curled so very well at that Travelers Championship. So we play on here in this third end. PEI looking to perhaps set things up for a steal here in 3. Of course, the draws at this Everest Canadian Senior Curling Club Championship, 8 ends as opposed to 10 for some other major championships. The decision to go from 10 ends to 8 at this competition was made a couple of years ago, and by all accounts, well received by all of the curlers at the senior level. So you just heard Rizzo having a discussion about time, confirming it at 9.5. There's the rock. Good weight on this, just a brush for line. Right on that rock, angles it away, and again, a nice delivery from Ontario as they get just the right angle to take care of the PEI red and leave the other 2 Ontario stones intact. We've seen some dandy shot making over the course of almost 3 days here in Digby. And you can imagine it's only going to get better as we start getting into the championship pool and the semifinals leading up to the gold medal final on Saturday. Lots of great curling still to come, and we're glad to have it all for you on Bell Alliant TV1. You can visit bellalliant.ca/TV1 for online and on-demand content, as well as information on programming available to Bell Alliant Fiber Op customers in Atlantic Canada on Channel 1 and 401. Bell Alliant, there's more to love with Fiber Op. What's not? So no PEI red to speak of, and 3 Ontario yellows sitting in the rings. Now on the scoreboard, in behind, they've got 3-0 Ontario, but by virtue of Ontario throwing first, no, that's right, I'm sorry, my mistake. It was a single point. My absolute mistake. It's 3-0. So Dolan did not get that to hang around. And thank you to Chuck Calder. Not only is he directing switching, but he's also doing audio and graphics, wearing many hats down there. So my goodness, I had my brain twisted around there. So obviously with PEI having the hammer, that would indicate that Ontario got the point. So it's 3-0, not 2-1. So I do apologize for that. And again, when I looked, I kind of wanted to lean towards Ontario being the closer of the two when Dolan let that shot go. So just a minor brain cramp from yours truly. But paying attention, and we've had both. We've had times when we've been right and the scoreboard has been wrong. So in this particular case, I will say thank you to the manual scoreboard keeper for having that right and allowing me to give my head a shake and to get it back where it should be, 3-0 Ontario. So sorry, PEI, I gave you a point that you didn't have and I took one away from you. And so it is a PEI after giving up that steal of 1, trailing 3-0 here with the hammer. Okay, that's my only mistake for the week, I promise. And I know somewhere Chuck in the control room is laughing. So PEI with work to do here, and similar to the way we saw this Ontario rink on a previous feature match that we did, Joanne Rizzo and her Ontario foursome, very methodical. They just come at you and they just keep making shot after shot after shot, which just puts the pressure squarely on the shoulders of their opponent. And we saw it there in that last end. Kim Dolan had to really come in with a finesse shot, and it just went a little bit too deep. And credit again to the Ontario sweeping as they jumped on it right away and dragged it just far enough to allow the Ontario stone to count. So Ontario here with the 3-0 lead, coming right down that center line. And there's a whole lot of movement as that pretty much clears everything out of the position that they were in. And the important news for Ontario is that red Charlottetown PEI rock has disappeared from view. And now, as you see on the right hand of your screen, only Ontario rocks remain. And as you see more and more red eliminated, that just means that it's less opportunity for points here in this third end. PEI needs something good to happen here in end number 3. Ontario with 2 in the first, a steal of 1 in the second. And PEI really needing to get something to happen here in this third end. Looking to bring this down now, and it gets a little touch off of that yellow, and will stop behind the tee line in the forefoot. So it looks now as though Lackey has the brush placement right in front of the rock, and Rizzo will attempt to come down and take that PEI red rock out of play. And we've seen Rizzo this week make several shots that she's had to from her skip position. First throw here for Rizzo in this third end. Little directional sweeping coming here from Ontario, trying to get it to go a little bit to the left. jams on their own yellow, stops right there and nudges the PEI Red Rock a little bit to the back, so didn't quite get as thin as they wanted, but not bad at all, as the Ontario Rock now sits shot and the PEI Red Rock moved a little deeper into the back of the house. So Kim Dolan with the hammer here in 3 will get ready to throw her first of 2 in this third end. Dolan out of the hack and delivers her first of 2. Scales and Matheson will handle the sweeping here for this first skip stone for PEI. And Dolan yelling after it right away. Onto that yellow, takes it straight back, and the nice double made there. Good shot from Dolan. She'll feel pretty darn good about that one. So now we'll see if the double opportunity is there for Rizzo as well. Risky move if she goes for it and doesn't get it, as it could potentially allow PEI to go for 2. So Rizzo, last rock for Ontario in this third end. Shots away. Now Rizzo calls for some brushing. As you can see, just off to the side, trying to will it over just a little bit to the side. There's one. She'll roll over. And now a pretty decent opportunity for Dolan to remove that yellow Ontario stone and score a deuce of her own here in this third end. So Kim Dolan, who had her final throw of the second end go a little deep, and it allowed Ontario to steal 1, has a chance now with the removal of 1 Ontario rock to score 2 points and get right back in this one. So playing the intern here. Brushers on it right away, just for line, trying to keep it straightened out. Keep that path clear. Wants to come down, hit. She doesn't want to roll too far, and no, it's fine. It'll just die right there, and it is indeed a score of 2 for Kim Dolan. So nice work by Dolan to put that second end behind her, come back, play a strong, consistent third end. And now we'll go to the fourth, and a different looking game now as it's just a 1-point affair. Ontario leading by a score of 3-2, and Ontario will have the hammer in this fourth end. Of course, after this end, we'll step aside and take a break. Take a moment, and the Digby Area Recreation Committee would like to thank the sponsors of the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championship. Platinum sponsors: Town of Digby, Municipality of the District of Digby, Province of Nova Scotia, Department of Health and Wellness, Bell Canada, ACOA, which is the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. Silver sponsors: Simcoe Refrigeration, Tim Hortons Digby, Conway and Meteghan, Jet Ice, the Atlantic Superstore Digby, and Broker Link Insurance. Once again, a big thank you to some of the sponsors of the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championship. And of course, Bell Alliant TV1, proud to be the official broadcaster for the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championship from the Digby Area Recreation Centre, Digby Arena, located in lovely Digby, Nova Scotia. A little over 2 hours from the capital city of Halifax. And this yellow Ontario rock will spin around and twirl to a stop. And the other Charlottetown rock is left as a very high guard as PEI will get ready with their second throw here. Julie Scales with the throw. She comes down well by the guard. And will this one get into the rings? Yes, it will. And it'll sit just off the center line at the top of the 12. So, rocks in play here in this fourth end. This might shape up to be an interesting one. Julie McMullen from Kingsville, Ontario. And I think that might have been touched by the sweepers, so that Ontario rock is burned and will be taken immediately out of play. As you see, Rizzo will walk it to the back. So, slight break perhaps for Team Prince Edward Island. Unfortunate there for Julie McMullen. But I suppose better for it to happen in the first two rocks than in the last two, in any particular end. Into second stone now, Sandra Matheson with her first offering. And again, coming down that same side, well by the guard. Looking to bring it over and in. But as Rizzo jumps on and gets a brush to it, that's going to go right to the very back of the 12-foot, about halfway outside the back. So, 4 of the 5 rocks that have been thrown here are still in play. Kristen Turcott out of Toronto, Ontario. Toronto, the 4th largest metropolitan area in North America. Hard to believe when you think about all of the big cities in the United States, but Ontario has the 4th largest in North America, that being Toronto. Matheson with her second throw here. Both sweepers, Scales and McInnes, working it. A slight bit of directional brushing, I guess, as it'll come to rest as a guard in that 4-foot zone just above the 12. So we'll see now. Looks as though Rizzo might be calling for this shot to come off the PEI stone in the front and then maybe get a little roll behind some cover. So there's the hit off the the Charlottetown, and the roll off to the side, and it'll stop right where you see it. It's off to the 12, and you see Dolan immediately calling for the removal of that Ontario yellow. Susan McInnes with her throw here, the vice for Dolan and Team Prince Edward Island. On its way. Line looks good. Takes it out, and it'll get a roll the other way right to the button, sitting right on top of that Everest logo. And you know, it's great. We've talked about the title sponsor, Everest, and what they do, but really, one of the main parts and reasons for their involvement is they really truly believe in curling as an iconic part of the Canadian fabric of society, and certainly on the sports side of things, some would consider curling to be the unofficial third sport nationally for Canada. Of course, hockey and lacrosse considered to be the national sports, but some would say curling should be in there as well, and some of the more iconic sports moments in Canadian history can be linked, Canadian sports history can be linked to the game of curling. And one of the goals and mission statements of Everest as the title sponsor of this event is to show that and to raise the profile of senior curling in Canada and bring it back to a level so that it's on par with a Scotties on the women's side or a Brier on the men's side. And the fact of the matter is, if you look down the lineups of these provincial representatives, a lot of these curlers have curled at the national and international level for Canada on behalf of the Scotties and Brier. So a lot of these senior curlers, they may not be in that main circuit anymore in terms of, world championships from the Brier or the Scotties, but they're still competing at a high level. They're still competing under the banner of seniors curlers, and Everest wants to really shine a light on that and raise the profile of seniors curling. And from what I've seen here this week, they are doing a fantastic job of just that. So a little tip of the broadcast hat to the fine folks at Everest. And if you want to know more about Everest, well, all you need to do is visit everestfuneral.ca. Everest, the first nationwide funeral planning and concierge service. And this Ontario yellow, as you see, McInnes giving a bit of a brush to pull that to the back. So kind of a half circle of stones here going around the perimeter of the house. Nothing whatsoever in the 12 or 4. Everything either out front as a guard or sitting around the perimeter of the 12. So kind of an interesting configuration of rocks right now for Kim Dolan. Ontario again with the hammer in the 4th end, and they lead by a score of 3-2. There'll be a break between the 4th and 5th end. And what will the score be going into that break? Well, only a few more rocks until we find out. Kim Dolan, lots of curling experience. She's curled at the Canadian Juniors, the Canadian Mixed, as well as a 4th place finish in the 2010 Scotties. As mentioned, she calls Charlottetown home. And she's a restaurant and bar owner back home in Charlottetown. Hey, that's good to know. Next time I'm in Charlottetown, should find out the name of her business and drop in and see if I can get a frosty bread. So Dolan delivers, and we see Rizzo now having a look at almost a straight line of PEI red rocks down through the middle of the house. Both teams playing pretty well here. And that steal of 1 by Ontario in the 2nd. I mean, it wasn't that Dolan made a terrible shot. It wasn't. It was just she made the shot that she wanted. She just had a little too much weight. And I mean too much of weight. And Ontario was able to brush it and drag it just far enough to allow the steal of 1. But, I mean, really, both of these teams have executed fairly well here through almost 4 complete. Rizzo comes down, hits on that guard, rolls over, hits her own, and opens up the middle part of the a little bit. So if you just take a look at the rocks there, PEI currently sitting 2. So we'll see what Dolan wants to do here. She's going to want to make sure that she limits any opportunity for Dolan to do a multiple takeout of PEI rocks and see if she can keep this to a single point for Ontario and perhaps even a steal should Dolan make a great shot and somehow Rizzo miss on her final. And that's sometimes, that's sometimes the way you got to think. I mean, you've got to put yourself in a position where you're thinking about not only making a great shot to set yourself up, but perhaps making a great shot to force a mistake from your opponent. And sometimes, in the pressure of the moment, you can see those things happen. And it doesn't take much of an error to cause an end-changing mistake. Dolan with her final throw here in this fourth end, trying to force the hand of Joanne Rizzo. Slowly curling over now towards that center line. Into the house by that stone and see if she can freeze it up against that rock at the back. Not quite up against it, but it'll sit about 5 inches away from it. So Joanne Rizzo now doesn't look like she's got an opportunity here to score anything one, simply because the yellow rock that you see at the back right, that is further back than the rock just to the right of that, which is the red PEI rock. That red PEI rock would count as second shot should Rizzo be able to come down and be shot. So tough situation here for Rizzo, as she will be, looks like anyway, forced into making a shot to take a single point with the hammer. And again, that's not all bad considering the way things started out for PEI, going down early 3-0. So if they can be within a couple of points going into the fourth end break and coming out into the fifth with hammer, that's not all bad for Kim Dolan and PEI. So Joanne Rizzo with her final rock here. This is the final stone. McMullen and Turcotte both brushing that now for line, trying to drag it in. She needs to capture a good part of the 8, if not 4. And why not part of the button as well? So a single point for Ontario in the fourth end. They will take a 2 lead into the fourth end break. We'll step aside, take a break ourselves. You're watching the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships live and exclusively on Bell Alliant TV1. 4 ends in the books. Ontario leads PEI 4-2. We'll be back.
The second largest biosphere reserve in Canada. Nestled in the southwest part of Nova Scotia, the Biosphere Reserve encompasses nearly 1/4 of the province. That's 1.5 million hectares. The area is rich in natural and cultural diversity. Here you can immerse yourself in our deep-rooted cultures of the Mi'kmaq, the Acadian, Loyalists, and the Scottish. Referred to as Gespequick by the Mi'kmaq people, this is the flowing waters of lakes and rivers meet the ocean. Our UNESCO Biosphere consists of Kejimkujik National Park and National Historic Site of Canada, the Tobeatic Wilderness Area, and surrounding picturesque communities within the 5 municipal counties that form our zone of cooperation. We are home to the highest diversity of plants, reptiles, and amphibians east of Ontario. The stories of our Mi'kmaq ancestors are conveyed here through petroglyphs. We have the largest collection of petroglyphs in eastern North America. With a coastline etched and shaped by the sea, the biosphere is greeted by the Atlantic Ocean with sweeping, surfy sand beaches and the powerful tidal surge of the Bay of Fundy, home to the world's highest tides, rises and falls some 50 feet twice daily, boasting a bounty of sea life and sea vegetables. For generations we have called this land home. We have fished, farmed, harvested, and gathered, while appreciating our unique traditional way of life. where man and his biosphere interact sustainably. Come visit, sample, and experience. Embark on an ocean adventure in search of plankton and whales. Mother Nature in caring for her species at risk. Retrace the footsteps of our Mi'kmaq people, or explore and savor the biosphere by paddle or on foot. You'll find yourself connecting to our unique cultural and physical landscapes, our home. As our guest, let us guide you to UNESCO Southwest Nova Biosphere Reserve, and you'll soon realize why UNESCO designated this part of Nova Scotia as one of the world's biosphere reserves. The UNESCO Southwest Nova Biosphere Reserve has an adventure waiting. All it needs is you.
Fifth end action just underway here in Digby. We got a good one going here, but Ontario and PEI on the women's side. Ontario 3-1, PEI 1-3. Certainly both teams want the win, but in terms of who really needs it more, well, PEI certainly. Just to recap the scoring for you, Ontario Hammer scored 2 in the first. Ontario stole 1 in the second. Prince Edward Island scoring 2 in the third, and then Ontario with a single in 4. Both teams took that fourth end break, rehydrated, talked some strategy, and we come out here for the fifth. PEI has the hammer, and they trail by a score of 4-2. Both of these teams have shown a willingness to put rocks in play and to see what the other may do in response to that. And to this point, save for that Kim Dolan final rock in the second end, which again, it wasn't a bad shot, it just was a little heavy. But other than that, both of these teams right up and down the lineup have been pretty consistent and had been making the shots they've been asked to make. And as we see right there, Ontario taking care of that PEI rock with a nice throw. Julie Scales with her throw here. Second draw of the day, 10th overall. After this one, a couple of more draws in the round robin, and then starting tomorrow, the crossovers will start taking place. And again, we won't know what the matchups are until later this evening after we are off the air from the final draw. That's when the organizers will start looking at head, all of those things, and the seedings will shake out, and then we'll know what the matchups will be for tomorrow. We'll have championship pool action starting off tomorrow morning on Sheet B and D, live here on Bell Alliant TV1. Mind you that Bell Alliant is proud to be the official broadcaster for the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships from the Digby Arena and the Digby Curling Club in Digby, Nova Scotia. Bell Alliant, there's more to love with fiber op. Sandra Matheson with her throw. She immediately stands up, and Piers, Scales, and McInnes will provide the front end sweeping. Just want to give a shout out to our camera operators as well. They've got to take those cameras after each draw, pull them, unhook them, drag them all the way back, store them, and then for another draw, they have to take the cameras, walk them down those little blue walkways that you see, set them up, and get ready to bring you those nice shots that you see right there. So a lot of work goes on behind the scenes, work and effort that you don't necessarily see. You get to turn on your TV or turn on your device and watch a broadcast, but so much goes into it. Running of cables, running of wires, hooking things up, making sure you've got power, all kinds of connections, making sure your audio cables are run, making sure the monitors and headsets are in place. The broadcasters like myself. So a lot of work goes into it, and I know certainly I appreciate all of the effort that goes in to the men and women behind the scenes that make these broadcasts happen. PEI coming straight up, nose hit onto the Ontario yellow, drives it out the back, and PEI will sit one and a couple of guards out front, but both of the guards from Ontario off to the side. Still could be of use, but right now not really affecting what's going on in the center portion of the ice. Now they call for a sweep. Slight angle hit. A little bit of a roll, but not much. And the Ontario Rock will stop at the top of the 12. And the PEI Stone taken out of play. So we'll move into Vice Rocks now. Susan McInnes. You see her right there from lovely Charlottetown. McInnes, spending a long time, picked the game up at the age of 13 and has got lots of experience. Has played in numerous Scotties. Was on a bronze medal team in 2003. Also competed at several Canadian mixed championships, claiming in 2000, as well as a silver medal back in 2002. So again, when you're an experienced skip like Dolan, how nice is it to have all of that experience right behind you in your vice position in the name of Susan McInnes. Carrie Lackey, the for McInnes, the vice for Team Ontario. Lackey, no stranger to curling as well. Skipped the gold medal team from Ontario at the 2014 Travelers Canadian Curling Club Championship. And also played for Team Ontario at the Canadian Mixed back in 2005. She works in the medical lab at the Grand River Hospital back home in Ontario. It's interesting, too, when you talk to these curlers, they come from all different backgrounds, varied fields of endeavor, but, when they all come under the umbrella of curling, it's all one big family, and it's neat to be a part of. Susan McInnes with her second throw here in this fifth end. PEI again with the hammer here, trailing by 2. Lots of open ice down the middle. McInnes, a little too much chutzpah on that one as it goes all the way out the back. So getting stones here in this fifth end, Joanne Rizzo will make her way down. Rizzo, again, experienced curler, finished 4th in the 2003 Canadian Mixed, participated in the Olympic trials in 2005 and was a runner-up at the Olympic trials in 2013. So again, great experience to have at that high level for any team, and it's working well here for Team Ontario. Rizzo comes down screen left, but right side of the ice way. Takes out that PEI rock and gets a pretty good roll right over, almost dead center on that button. Get an update here for you momentarily on our feature game on sheet D. We've got New Brunswick ahead of Northwest Territories by a score of 5-2. It looks like play in the fifth end. So that game moving along at just about the same pace as our game and almost a similar score. 5-2 New Brunswick over Northwest Territories, 4-2 Ontario. And again, both games in the fifth end, and those are our feature games here in Draw 10 on Bell Alliance TV1. So, pretty clean end going here. Hey, wave, John. There we are. There's our little cubby bowl. Coffee in hand, pen in hand. That's all we need. So if you're wondering where we're tucked away, we are high above the ice surface here in Digby. John Coette to your right, my left, and there's where we are. That's our bird's eye view of the Digby Arena. And that's our feature games, sheets B and D. Just in case you thought that we might be broadcasting this from the comfort of our couch back home. We're here on tucked away in this cozy little corner and high above the arena. So Kim Dolan with the hammer here, trying to chip away at this 2-point Ontario lead. Good game going here between these two teams. Final stone here for the Prince Edward Island skip. Final stone of this fifth end. She needs to come down, get the hit and the roll for the blank. And she will blank the end and carry the hammer over into end number 6. When you have the opportunity to blank, if you don't see an end shaping up the way that you want it, that's what you want to do. If you're a skip, you take the opportunity to blend or to blank. And again, not an easy thing to do. No easy shots in curling. I mean, let's face it. Something happens to that, Dolan misses, or something happens with the stone, it picks something on the ice. All of a sudden, you give up the steal. So again, it might look easy, but you got to make the shot. You blank the end, and that's just what Kim Dolan did there. So now she takes the hammer into an even end, and if everything kind of balances out in terms of give and take, your opponents go back and forth with hammer. Ideally, you like to have the hammer in even ends. So by blanking 5, that's exactly what Dolan does, as she now carries the hammer over into an even numbered end. Thanks some more of the sponsors of this 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships live on Bell Alliance TV1. Bronze sponsors Grant Thornton, Digby Fire Department, Bellevaux Motors, Claire Dodge Chrysler Jeep, Automotive Group Digby, and AVR and CKDY. And the Friends of the Seniors sponsors Annapolis Basin Conference Center, East Coast Lifestyles, Scotiabank Digby Branch, Digby Pines Golf Resort and Spa, Wilson's Hardware Limited, and Labatt's. You hear lots of activity going on the other sheets. All 5 sheets here at the Digby Arena in play for this 10th draw this afternoon. Of course, our feature on sheet B, Ontario and Prince Edward Island on the women's side of the draw. And again, 2 pools on both sides, Prince Edward Island and Ontario, part of Pool B. And coming into action today, Newfoundland and Labrador leading the way in Pool B with a 4-0 record. So it would certainly be important for Ontario to win here today to try and keep pace and keep the gap between Newfoundland and Labrador and themselves as close as possible. Try and get an update of the standings after this draw, and again, final day of the round robin. They'll start getting into the championship pool and the seeding pool. Crossovers tomorrow. And you will not miss any of the action on B and D, because we will have it all for you. Bell Alliance TV1. PEI brings that one down and kind of nestles it in between those 2 Ontario rocks. There you see Rizzo, the skip of Ontario, delivering the message to her friend as to what she wants. And Rizzo gets the affirmative nod back. Good shot there as Ontario brings that in around a little bit of traffic in the front and nestles it up against one of their own stones there at the top of the 8. So Ontario trying to pile up some rocks here in this 6th end. PEI blanking 5 to carry the hammer over into this end. Right now, PEI have a couple of yellow Ontario problems to deal with. Sandra Matheson with the throw here in end number 6, using that stabilizer in the left hand. See a lot of curlers using those now. I'd probably need a stabilizer in each hand and one on my rear end. Save me from going end over end down the sheet of ice. So Rizzo giving lots of ice here. And the Ontario throw on its way. There you see the thinking time clock in the background. No problem there. Still plenty of time on that end of things, plus the timeouts that the teams have. really trying to work this now. They gave lots of ice to try to work with that swing that the ice has, and maybe didn't curl as quite as much as they would have. Still, not a bad situation for Team Ontario as it nudges its own back, and that Ontario Rock now at the top of the forefoot has a little protection in front. But there are a couple of Ontario Rocks to work with there in terms of maybe running one back onto another. Sandra Matheson with her second and final throw here. PEI, last rock in this end, so there'll be 4 rocks each left to come here in this 6th. Trying to take advantage of that close-knit group of rocks. Takes care of one Ontario stone. The shooter rolls out, and then another Ontario rock gets pushed a little deeper back, but still Ontario counting 2 right now as we get into the final 4 stones of this end. So Carrie Lackey will settle into the hack and get ready to throw for Team Ontario. And again, you see Rizzo giving Lackey lots of ice to work with here, trying to play kind of the big curl or swing in this ice. And look at Lackey, just the intense stare as she watches that. Just a little bit of mild brushing just to kind of keep that line clean. It'll start to work over just a little now, and it will just tap ever so slightly on that other Ontario rock, and we'll sit it there. So the Ontario rock just behind that top rock, providing a little protection, a little bit anyway, and with a potential jam. You see Dolan there looking at what she wants. See if she can clear these Ontario yellows out of danger. Susan McInnes with the throw. Scales and Matheson providing clean line brushing. Ooh, and it wrecks on the guard in front. Unfortunate there. And I don't think McInnes thought that that was going to be the case when she let that go. But certainly a solid hit on that guard in the front, and not at all what Susan McInnes wanted to have happen. And you see her just in the foreground there kind of giggling and laughing about it with Scales. I think it caught her off guard. And the sweepers as well, because the way they were working it, they didn't seem to be overly concerned about the path of that stone. Sometimes if they're worried about perhaps wrecking on a guard in front, you'll see them do a little directional sweeping, trying to maybe nudge it just a bit, but there didn't seem to be a lot of urgency on that front end, so a bit of a misread there on that delivery from McInnes. And a slight opening now for Team Ontario. Down now and put a guard in place, putting a little extra pressure on Dolan. PEI with last rock here in this 6th end. So McInnes got to chew that one up and spit it out and move on. So 2nd throw here for McInnes in this 6th end. She wants to see if she can get it back for a double opportunity, but just hit it a little too thin and barely nudging that second Ontario stone, but just not moving it enough. The shooter rolls off to the side, and Ontario still sitting 2. And now Lackey and Rizzo, knowing the gravity of this situation, being in this 5th end in an 8-end affair, and a possibility here maybe to force Dolan into doing something she doesn't want to do, and a chance to maybe set it up to force a steal here for Ontario in this 5th end. So we'll see here as Ontario, they called in their coach as well. Now they're having a full meeting of the minds for Team Ontario. The 4 team members and their coach having a close look at the setup of rocks here and what they might want to do. See if they can slide something over in behind cover and really force the hand of Kim Dolan and put the pressure on the PEI skip. So there's what they're looking at. Those 2 rocks that you see there, yellow from Ontario, and then that 1 Charlottetown Redstone, keeping in mind Dolan and PEI have last rock. But again, just a real good chance here for Ontario to put a little extra pressure on Skip Dolan. So much strategy goes into the game of curling. A risk and reward game as well. And when the risk doesn't pay off, it can be heartbreaking, but when it does, it can be spectacular. So Joanne Rizzo, after the timeout, coach brought in for a discussion. She knows what she wants to do, and she'll make her throw. First of 2 here for the Ontario skip. Looking to really set something up here and perhaps force a steal. Trying to come down, angle off that red, and I think she might have been hoping to push back her own rock a little bit deeper and maybe get a little more cover for it. But again, not a bad situation as she takes out the red PEI rock and then rolls over just a bit to sit almost right on top of that other Ontario stone that you see just in behind there in the 8. So now it's up to Kim Dolan to answer back and decide what she wants to do here, keeping in mind, again, Dolan blanked 5 so she could have the hammer here in this 6th end, but it's been Ontario who have somewhat had control of this end to this point, and Rizzo really difficult for Dolan here in this 6th end. Safe to say there won't be a blank in this. Someone's scoring points. It's just a matter of who and how many. So, Dolan with her first. Comes down trying to jam and clear some of those rocks out, and because of the way Dolan had those 2 Ontario rocks stacked up, the jam works in favor of Ontario as the Charlottetown rock goes well off to the side and won't be or shouldn't be a factor. And then the 2 Ontario rocks still sitting as 1 and 2. So now if you're Rizzo, what do you do? Do you try and come in and freeze onto the top of those rocks and do the same type of situation? Make it difficult for Dolan to remove them and at the very least perhaps force her into taking a single? So a couple of options here for Rizzo. This has been a great game, a lot of fun strategy on. This has been the purest of curling that you're going to see. Close match, low points, good shots, lots of strategy, timeouts to talk things over. It's been a very, very technical curling draw. So Rizzo, the throw is out of her hand. It's her last here. 1 rock left to come, and it belongs to PEI. She's looking to come down now and freeze right up against her own Ontario rock. And she'll tap back. Maybe a little more weight than she would have liked, but again, you know, Dolan has got to come up here and make a real good shot of her own. She is facing 3 Ontario rocks right now in this 5th end. No room for error whatsoever for Charlottetown and Kim Dolan. It all falls now in this sixth end on the shoulders of the PEI skip. And again, it's an 8-end draw, as all the draws are here at the Canadian Senior Championship, sponsored by Everest. So you don't have a lot of wiggle room either in terms of another end or two to make things right. Well, this is it. Last rock in this sixth end. Dolan lets it free. Well, it's away. Scales and Matheson just kind of clearing a path. Starts to curl over. She needs to catch the best part of the four. And, oh, that's close. That is close. So they move the red PEI rock first. Sometimes they move the rock that is the point. Other times they leave the rock that's the point. So again, wait and see who settles into the hack here. But that was close. The Ontario rock and the PEI rock, again from our angle, tough to tell. But the curlers with the bird's eye view right over top decided right away, and it looks like a red PEI rock in the hack, so that means PEI gets the point. And this time I'm sure, because if you've got the hammer, you gave up the point. I'm not going to have a brain cramp this time, as I did earlier. So PEI to throw first here. And Ontario will have the hammer with a 1-point lead. So again, so very close. Back in the second end, Dolan had a similar situation where she had draw weight to score a single with the hammer. It was a little too heavy. Ontario was able to sweep it and pull it just far enough to steal a point, and we just saw it there in the sixth end. Facing Ontario rocks, Dolan with the hammer again had to have draw weight, and again almost a little bit too heavy, but almost doesn't hurt on that particular instance for PEI. Dolan does indeed get the point, and it is now 4-3, so a 1-point lead for Ontario. This has been a dandy. And it's handshakes on our feature game on sheet D. New Brunswick with a solid 7-2 victory over the Northwest Territories, and handshakes are the order of the day on sheet D, so chalk up a victory for Team New Brunswick. And they will await to see things shake out in the rest of the pool. And here on our feature game on sheet B, a much different situation. The only handshakes I would expect will be at the completion of either the eighth end or even potentially an extra end, which in the games that I've called so far this week has not been the norm. Most of the games that I've done, save for one, have been handshakes early on. So bucking the trend here for games that I've called. Both teams now going to see what they can do with some guards in play, and we could see this end come down to the very last rock. Team Ontario will have the hammer here. By that guard, looking to run it back onto the Reds. Take it back. Nice shot. Good curling shot there from Ontario. Done by Julie McMullen. And you know, sometimes they make it look easy, but truly, to make that kind of a shot with a guard in front, just throw it so that it just barely gets by, and then executing the shot that you want, that's not easy to do. So Sandra Matheson now will throw for Prince Edward Island. Coming around those rocks at the front. And it will sit just about the center line in the 12-foot at the top. Kristen Turcotte now for Ontario. Fastball right down the middle, and it's a strike. As she takes out that rock, shooter rolls out, opens up the middle portion just a little bit. And we go back now to Matheson as we see this seventh end unfolding here. 4-3 your score, Ontario leading. Recap the scoring for you. Ontario with 2 in the first, a steal of 1 in the second. PEI with 2 in the third. Ontario bounced back with a single in 4. PEI blanked the 5th and then scored a single in 6. And we are underway here in the 7th end. And that is your score, 4-3, Ontario with the lead and hammer. So that PEI offering from Matheson will stop right there and really clogging up that middle part of the ice now. Turcotte with the throw, coming right into that pile in the front, trying to move it all around. There's 1, there's 2, make it a double, and a nice shot there from Kristen Turcotte for Team Ontario as she doubles the PEI out of play and leaves the shooter right there in front. That ought to make Joanne Rizzo happy. Susan McInnes now throwing for PEI. So PEI puts one into the rings, and it'll sit behind the tee line, halfway between the 4 and the 8. Good matchup here in draw 10 between these two teams. Just to let you know, coming up a little bit later, we'll have the third draw of today and the 10th draw. Third draw of the day, 10th draw, 11th draw, I guess, overall, wouldn't it? Yeah. Come your way at 4 o'clock Atlantic time. Sheet B will have men's action. Saskatchewan taking on Northern Ontario. And then on Sheet D, also men's action as Newfoundland and Labrador will take on Nunavut. So again, we'll have those 2 feature matches coming for you on the men's side at 4 p.m. local time. First things first, though, we've got to finish up our game here on Sheet B. Ontario leading PEI 4-3. 7th end action here, and Ontario and skip Joanne Rizzo with last. And now Dolan trying to get the attention of the official. She's frantically waving her hands there, trying to call timeout. Wanting to take a look at things here, and would love to try and steal here and then maybe take her chances in the eighth end and try and steal again. I don't think that Dolan likes the idea of even giving up a single point and then having to come back and score 2 with the hammer in 8. So there you see the PEI foursome. Dolan and McInnes in the rings, and Scales and Matheson just outside talking over what they want to do. So to the left of your screen, that little line of yellow Ontario stones, and then sitting just behind the tee line, that one red Prince Edward Island rock. So, maybe they're discussing, come down, maybe tap off one of the Ontario rocks, move it out, and then get a roll over. Because what you want to look at as well is not only the thought of perhaps trying to steal, but you want to minimize any yellow Ontario rocks in the rings, because again, Rizzo and Ontario do have last rock, and if somehow Dolan doesn't make the shot that she wants, Rizzo is able to come back and make some shots, all of a sudden you could see Ontario put a crooked number up on the board and then really put the pressure on Dolan and PEI going into the eighth end. So Dolan has talked it over with her front end. And McInnes will be tasked here with delivering the shot that Dolan wants. This has been a fun game, not only to call, but to kind of watch as a fan as well. And, it's hard not to be a fan, even when you're broadcasting, when you get two teams kind of playing a sound, technical curling draw. And that's what we're seeing right here. So here's the offering from McInnes. The front end, look at that. Scales and Matheson just leaning over those brushes. Really leaning into it now for line. She's going to try to tap it off, get the roll over. It's probably going to roll maybe, I was going to say maybe halfway in the 8 foot, but it stops just at the very top of the 4. So she gets the angle on the Ontario rock, takes one out of play, has the shooter roll over, and right now, Prince Edward Island sitting 2. So the question now, is the double there for Ontario and Rizzo? Carrie Lackey settles in, and not much debate as to what Ontario wants to do here. Lackey has that shot on its way. One brush being put to it now, trying to keep that line straight. There's one, and they drive it straight back. So I think the double chance was there, but they hit that top rock on the nose, drive it back. So now we'll see what Dolan wants to do with it. And perhaps the call for the double may have been a little too risky for Rizzo in that particular case. Maybe she didn't call for it, and that's what she wanted. Because again, you got to think 2 or 3 scenarios ahead, especially in a tight game like this with only one end to play in regulation. If you try to make the double and you miss, all of a sudden you're giving the advantage over to your opponent. So now maybe the weight put back on the shoulders of Dolan here as, again, she realizes Ontario has last rock and she's got to make something happen here. So Dolan with the throw. Dolan's first here for the skip. She takes one, and now they're going to try and drag that right out. Ontario on it right away, trying to drag it out. So Dolan removes one Ontario rock, and currently PEI sitting 2, but that rock in the middle that you see there, wide open for Joanne Rizzo. It's a great draw of curling. being brought to you by Bella Lion TV1. So glad that you're able to watch this wherever you're tuned in. If you've got a device that's got a browser, you can watch BellaLiant.ca/TV1. So here's Rizzo with her first of two here. Ontario last rock in this 7th end. She looks to be right on that red rock. She's going to hit. How much of a roll will she get? Just a little one. It's the roll over. And it'll sit just behind that tee line in the 4-foot. So right now, Ontario sits one. Second shot is PEI. Third shot would be Ontario. So it would appear that if Dolan can take care of this Ontario rock, she could be putting Rizzo in a situation where Rizzo will be forced to take a single and then take a 2-point lead into the 8th end. And then Ontario will have to defend and PEI will have hammer. But still a couple of shots to go here. Down it comes. Looking to be on that Ontario rock. It is. Just a small roll over towards the button, and it'll stop there. So, obviously, given the position of that second PEI rock that's on the outside of the 12-foot, no opportunity for any kind of a double here. So, really, the only option that Rizzo has is to take care of that PEI stone, take the single, and look to defend a 2-point lead in the 8th end. We saw in a game earlier, Alberta, I believe it was, came back from a 6-1 deficit, stole 2 in the high, and then scored 1 in the 9th to win against Northwest Territories. That was on the men's side. So anything really can happen. Rizzo down. This looks to be on the nose. No problem there. Single point for Ontario. So they will take the 5-3 lead into the 8th end, and PEI will have the hammer. So Kim Dolan and PEI are going to have to really set things up here right from the get-go in this 8th end. To generate some offense, they need 2 to force an extra end, and, well, hey, if they could win, wouldn't that be something? On the Ontario side, well, I don't want to say it's simple, but what Ontario has to do is right there before them. They have to defend this 2-point lead. They can even give up a point. They'd be okay with that, but they do not want to give up 2 or more. So a big end coming here for both these teams. Ontario looking to go 4-1. PEI looking to increase their record to 2-3. Julia McMullen with the first stone here of this 8th end. Only the second time that I've called here this week that's gone to the maximum 8. The other draw that I did that went 8 actually went to an extra end in 9. So McMullen brings that into the rings, which means now the players on both sides can go into the rings if they wish. Scales with her first throw. Again, PEI. Last rock here in this 8th end. So PEI now going to play the guard game. This one might... No, I was going to say it looked like it might have the steam to actually get into the rings, but it stops outside the blue of the 12-foot. So a very deep guard in place. See if that gets taken out or if that comes into play. Julie McMullen with her second here from the lead spot for Team Ontario. Now coming down the other side of the sheet. Over the hog line, it'll start to come over just a little bit. And we'll come to a stop at the top of the 8. So a few rocks in play here. 3 have been thrown, 3 are in play. Scales with her second throw. Coming down that same side that Mick Mullen came down moments ago. Almost exact same positioning as it tapped against that yellow Ontario rock. And will come to rest right where you see it. Bell Alliant is proud to be the official broadcaster for the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships from the Digby Arena and the Digby, Nova Scotia. Bell Alliant, there's more to love with fiber op. And this 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships proudly brought to you and sponsored by Everest. Learn more about Everest by visiting everestfuneral.ca. Everest, the first nationwide funeral planning and concierge service. So there you have a look at the current situation in the house. 2 yellow, 2 red, and if you're Kim Dolan and PEI, the more red you see, the better. And for Joanne Rizzo in Ontario, well, it's about avoiding the red. Prince Edward Island with their shot will bring it down, and wow, I think this is going to be a doozy of an 8th end. Lots of rocks in play here so far in the early stages, and that always makes it fun. The more rocks, the merrier. Again, if you're watching the broadcast, we love you via Twitter. Send out a tweet, use the hashtag TV1 or the hashtag EverestFurby. You can also tag me with my Twitter name, Josco, Johsco. So that Ontario rock takes out one PEI, slides over in behind some cover. So 3 Ontario rocks in the house right now, 1 PEI red, and Ontario sitting 1. Sandra Matheson gets ready to deal. And her was away. Scales and McInnes lean in to sweep, coming right down that center line, and you can see from that center line vantage point, it starts to curl over now, starts to come. Looks like it's going to freeze right up against that other PEI guard, push it back just a little, and both rocks will stay right there, about 2 feet or so, a foot to 2 feet above the top portion of the 12. Ontario, their task is to prevent PEI 2 or more. And for PEI, well, it's the opposite. They want to score 2 or more. Right on that PEI red, driving out of the back and leaving nothing but yellow there, and that is not good news for Kim Dolan and PEI. They do not want much yellow. Again, still rocks to go, but the more yellow you see, the more difficult it is for Dolan to achieve her task of scoring 2 or more. We're down to the last 4 rocks here of this end. Susan McInnes, the vice, with her first of 2 PEI in this 8th and potentially final end. Down it comes, looking to bang off one Ontario rock, and she eliminates it. Gets a pretty good roll over, so that's a good-looking shot there from Susan McInnes. And PEI is going to need a little more of that in their final 3. Carrie Lackey wants to come down and have a little confab with her skip. And thinking time, I think, getting on the lower end of things for these teams. And now again, the Ontario coach in there, chatting things over. So Rizzo, Carrie Lackey, Kristen Turcotte, Julia McMullen, all members of Ontario, kind of having a campfire circle there around the rings. Talking about just what they want to do. And their task is to make it as difficult as possible for Kim Dolan to score 2 points. And we saw in a couple of ends ago where a somewhat similar situation where Dolan was trying to remove some red PEI rocks, and they were all jammed together, and there was a couple of reds and a couple of yellows, and tried to come down into the pile and move them around, and she ended up moving 2 of her own and leaving the red rocks of PEI in place. So I know every end is different and every situation is different, but kind of similar in terms of the way the rocks are bunched in the house right now. So we'll see after that discussion how Ontario and Carrie Lackey deal with this. Lackey's throw is away. Now they get some straight line sweeping on there, really working it. On the one, trying to drive it back, angle it away. Nice looking shot right there by Carrie Lackey as she went into the pile and played the angle about as well as you can, given how close together those rocks were. And she angles one Ontario stone one way, her shooter rolls the other, essentially splitting the rings and then driving the red PEI rock out. So only 3 PEI rocks left to go, and they need at least 2 of them to score. Couldn't ask for much more. Just a great draw here between Ontario and PEI. So now PEI is going to try and come down and push one of those other rocks into the ring to see if they can take advantage of rocks that were played earlier. The only situation, or the only problem with that right now, is that there's still Ontario rings closer to the button, aka Ontario still sitting with scoring points, and PEI on the outside looking in. But not a bad play. You know, you're getting down to your last few rocks. Why not take advantage of some rocks that have already been played and try to push them into the rings? So Lackey, again, watching the situation. Rizzo calls Turcotte forward. Of course, the sweeping, so very important on the front end. You know, sweeping can make or break a shot on many occasions. So they wanted to call Turcotte forward. Rizzo still peering back into the rings. I'm sure perhaps double, triple checking her own thoughts to make sure she's 100% sure of what she wants to do. Because once you settle into that hack and grab that rock by the handle, you have to be 100% committed to the shot that you're making. Regardless of what other options you may have, you have to be 100% committed to the shot that you're going to make. So you see Rizzo, as we've seen many times, settle into the hack, then stand back up, just a routine she has. So here we go. Skip Stones, 8th end, Ontario up by 2. It's on its way, not a lot of brushing, just trying to keep that line clean. Little bit of directional brushing now coming from McMullen, trying to bring it over, trying to get it over more to the side. And they nudge it, and the shooter will sit at the top of the 12. They push that other rock a little bit forward. So now, pardon me, Dolan trying to see how she can deal with this pile of rocks. And now Dolan will call timeout and think it over. The Digby Area Recreation Committee would like to thank the sponsors of the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships. Platinum sponsors, the Town of Digby, Municipality of the District of Digby, Province of Nova Scotia, Department of Health and Wellness, Bell Canada, ACOA, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, and the silver sponsors, Simcoe Refrigeration, Tim Hortons Digby, Conway and Meteghan, Jet Ice, Atlantic Superstore Digby, and Broker Link Insurance. Wonderful to have so many great sponsors a part of this event, helping bring the 2016 Everest Canadian Senior Curling Championships not only to Digby, but also to the world via the official broadcast partner, Bell Alliant TV1. Dolan, again, same thing as we saw moments ago with Rizzo. May have different options, but now has to be 100% committed to the shot she's about to make. And she has got pretty good weight on this. We see a little bit of directional sweeping now, trying to encourage it just a little bit to the side. And a nose hit on that yellow. I think they were looking for a little and a roll over and perhaps chip off that yellow rock you see at the top of the 8-foot and maybe angle it in a little bit, but it doesn't go that way. And now the situation is 2 rocks to come, 1 for Ontario, 1 for PEI. And Joanne Rizzo wants to make very sure that whatever she does here, she makes it very hard for Prince Edward Island and Kim Dolan to score points. So Rizzo has 1 rock left to go here in this end, and she knows what she wants to do with it. And she settles into the hack. Now buckle up, folks. These last couple of shots are going to be interesting. Both teams, in my opinion anyway, certainly deserving of a victory, but that's not the way it works. One team's got to win, one team's got to lose. Dolan's shot on its way, looking to angle it off that red and bring it over. And she does, and that's it. Dolan knows nothing she can do to move all of those yellow rocks. The other red stone well over on the side, wasn't going to come into play. But what a great draw of curling. Hats off to both of these teams. Kim Dolan, Susan McInnes, Sandra Matheson, Julie Scales for PEI, Joanne Rizzo, Carrie Lackey, Kristen Turcott, and Julie McMullen for Team Ontario. Just a great game. So, they don't finish out the end. Handshakes all around. Your final score, Ontario 5 and Prince Edward Island 3. So that concludes our coverage here for second draw of today, 10th overall. The 11th draw comes your way 4:30 Atlantic time. And we'll be here to bring it to you live on Bell Alliance TV1. On behalf of Chuck Calder, Scott McRae, and the 45 North crew, as well as everybody behind the scenes at Bell Alliance TV1, I'm Scott Squires. Thanks very much for watching. We'll say so long for now from Digby, but we'll be back for our next draw at 4:30 Atlantic. Until then, bye for now.